So, Benedict, is it undemocratic?
Oh, in a way it is, but I think, as you pointed out there, we run our democracy is not a pure democracy. It's not a perfect one. It's a parliamentary one, and it's done by a system of political parties. And we have given one political party a mandate to form a government for the next few years, and it still has a majority in Parliament. I do think it's very interesting. I think you said it was about, 40% of people think that it's an undemocratic process. Well, I would ask any one of those people, first and foremost, did any of you vote Tory at the last general election? And I think you might find out a little bit. So I think you might find something out there about the leanings of those people as to whether or not they might think it was undemocratic were it another party that was in power. I think we need to remember, though, that the party system is very imperfect in that, of course, you have to pay to be a member, and you can't pay short term, just when a leadership contest is called. You need to have been a member for some time in order to be able to vote, certainly in the case of the Tory party. So that means that in some ways, it's not an awful lot of money to be a member of a political party, but it is an amount of money, and that does lock some people in society out of that process of being able to choose a party leader, which I suppose therefore does, it locks you out of one of the processes of choosing a prime minister. So in that sense, I think you could say that it was undemocratic. However, we all understand why it is. Parties need to be very discerning. They need to be made up of people who actually agree with their policies and who are therefore prepared to put their money where their mouth is and back that party. If it was just open to anybody, it would be a bit of a free-for-all. So whilst very imperfect, I know most people in this country did not vote Tory at the last general election expecting to have Liz Truss as their prime minister. That is the system that we have. And I wouldn't say it's the worst one in the world in terms of actually forming governments. As to whether or not you actually agree with what a party thinks, that's another matter.
So, this obviously begs the question, though, Benedict. Did we vote at the last general election for Boris Johnson, or did we vote for the Conservative Party?
This might sound very harsh, but if you voted for Boris Johnson, then that's kind of a you problem. If you're then not very happy with the system, you should understand the way that the system works. We don't vote for a president in this country. We don't vote for a prime minister in that sense. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of store is put in the leader, understandably, but you're voting for the party. You're voting for your local candidate as much as anything else. So, especially if you're sat in South Norfolk right now and you're upset at the potential prime minister being Liz Truss, well, again, you have the opportunity to vote for somebody else. As I say, again, it's a very imperfect system, but at the same time, there is a very good reason for it. We have the Queen as the head of state precisely so that power isn't concentrated too much in the hands of an individual. So that we don't have that sort of that sort of presidential head of state situation that other countries have, which works well for some of them, but as we've seen in recent years, certainly in the United States, can be very divisive, can cause an awful lot of issues. It puts a check on power, and it does mean it's slightly easier to get rid of an underperforming prime minister than, say, be stuck with him for an entire parliamentary term.
Oh, it doesn't seem that easy. No, interestingly, the reason I mention that, Benedict, is that if the caretaker PM were running as a candidate, i.e. Boris Johnson, 46% of Tory voters would prefer he won, compared to only 24% for Liz Truss and 16% for Rishi Sunak. So there is this huge groundswell of support for Boris Johnson. We completely understand that we are voting for a party, but there does seem to be this Boris Johnson thing going on still.
I think a Boris Johnson thing is a very good way of describing it. He's a fairly unusual character. And, he manages to inspire a lot of voters in a way that a lot of other politicians don't. But he has a particular relationship with his MPs. Not all of his MPs are particular fans. We all remember when Theresa May became Prime Minister. That was in some part because there was a very large Stop Boris campaign from amongst Tory MPs. And this, I think, is where it gets very interesting. The system is imperfect, in part, because there is a real disconnect between Tory MPs themselves, who are the ones that stand to gain the most from unseating a Prime Minister, and the members, who aren't the ones in Parliament, don't stand to gain so much, but were the ones that were very firmly behind him. I do wonder if, in some part, this is because of the options that have been chosen for the members by their MPs. Would we be saying something different if it was Penny Mordaunt or Priti Patel had decided to put herself forward, or, of course, Kemi Badenoch, who was very popular amongst a lot of the membership, quite surprisingly? The MPs decided, no, we don't want those people, we want these people. And that, I think, is where the issue comes, where a lot of members might be saying, this is undemocratic. It's the process of selecting the two people you get to decide between of being Prime Minister that's the issue, not so much the party themselves. the members would find an undemocratic process.
Well, we've already mentioned in my monologue at the beginning, Benedict, the hypocrisy of politics. But it's also very interesting that Labour are being quite vociferous in this isn't fair, it's undemocratic, exactly. When the last Prime Minister to be in this situation and to be undemocratically elected, not elected, is a Labour one in the shape of Gordon Brown, isn't it?
Yeah, although I do find it very amusing now that Gordon Brown is being wheeled out by a lot of Labour supporters as the voice of economic reason, partly because the current Labour leader doesn't really have very much to say of any use on the matter. I mean, yeah, we can talk about Gordon Brown separately if we want to. If ever you wanted somebody to oversee an economic crisis, hey, Gordon Brown's your man. But, obviously, the Labour Party are going to do this. They are in opposition. There is a dearth of ideas in the Labour Party at the moment. So all they can do is throw the traditional accusations. The Tories are undemocratic. They're undermining Britain's democracy. We're on a one-way path to fascism. That's what they do when they haven't got anything to offer. And that's not a secret, actually, to most of the electorate. And it's why right now the Labour Party, which could be storming to a lead, isn't doing that over the Tories because they just can't find within themselves the gumption, the message to persuade the British people that actually their direction is good. I would say a lot of members of the British public are not particularly enthused by Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak, but they know what the alternative is, and it's somebody who is offering absolutely nothing that's in any way incisive. And that, I think, tells you all you need to know about Labour's claims about this being undemocratic.